What up, y'all? It's your boy Shane G. We are back. Politics as usual, right here on the Ethos Media Network. Today, I just want to talk to y'all about how we got Donald Trump the first time. The reason why that's important is because him, Rick DeSantis, they both said they're basically head to head right now in the Republican race as far as probably who's going to be the nominee for the 2024 election. Those are kind of the top two names right now. And I know nobody likes Trump. I didn't like Trump. You didn't like Trump, most likely. Um, but I want to show why we got Donald Trump. Donald Trump. This is a quote from. This is a quote from, I believe, Jimmy Dore, who always says that Donald Trump is a symptom of the problem. He's not the problem. He's a culmination of all of the problems that we've had, and that's what I want to get into today. Um, Basically, when you have two sides, one side saying this is what we stand for, and they actually do all that shit, and then the other side saying this is what we stand for, but they do the same shit as the other team, then it leads you to putting your hope and your faith and your trust into people who don't deserve it. You know what I'm saying? That's basically what this is about. But let's get into it. So this is an older article from The Guardian that we're going to get into. But I think it's very important because it does tell properly the whole story as far as how Donald Trump became president the first time. And the reason I'm bringing this up now is because the Democrats have been repeating these same mistakes that got us Trump the first time. So if you don't think that whoever the Democrats decide to run in 2024, whether that be Kamala or somebody else, because it's not going to be Joe Biden, then we have to figure out what the Democrats have been doing since Biden's been president and since they took over government, and to see if we can compare what they've been doing now to what led to Donald Trump the first time, to see if possibly that's what's going to happen again in 2024. So let's get into it. So this article is from The Guardian, and it reads, "Why Democrats Share the Blame for the Rise of Donald Trump." "I was part of a Democratic administration that failed to fix a rigged system. I know our current president is a symptom of our disunion, not only its cause, not its only cause." This is from Robert Wright. Now, some of the framing of this I am going to disagree with, but I think he mostly gets this right. Like that opening sentence, "I was part of a Democratic administration that failed to fix a rigged system." That's in itself already being a little too charitable to the Democrats. To me, they participated in rigging the system. Just look up all the Hillary Clinton emails that leaked. They are basically the reason that Trump became president. They were sending emails to everybody in the media saying, push Trump, push Trump, push Trump. They called it the Pied Piper strategy. Basically, what that meant was they felt like Trump was such a horrible candidate that was going to be the easiest person to beat. So they wanted him propped up. So they were sending emails to everybody in the media, and they were basically saying, yo, prop up Trump so that way Hillary can beat him easily. And then on the other side, of course, the Democrats rigged the election against Bernie Sanders, the superdelegate situation, scheduling debates at the worst times and only having a couple of them, so Bernie couldn't really get his points off. Having all of the DNC's finances being funneled through the Clintons because she was essentially running it. And this is something that Donna Brazile spoke about in her book, that she tried to walk back, and then she was basically scared that they were going to try to kill her on some Seth Rich shit because, and that's a theory, by the way, that's alleged. I just want to make that clear. The whole Seth Rich thing I just said, that's an alleged thing that's out there. I'm not saying that's what happened, but this is what Donna Brazile said. Donna Brazile said she was scared. So the Democrats rigged it themselves in addition to everything that the Republicans are doing. So I just want to make that clear up front. It's not that the Democrats failed to fix a rigged system. They participated very much in rigging the system. So let's continue. "An impeached president who is up for re-election will this week deliver a State of the Union address to the most divided union in living memory. But why are we so divided? We're not fighting a hugely unpopular war on the scale of Vietnam. We're not in a deep economic crisis like the Great Depression. Yes, we disagree about guns, gays, abortion, and immigration, but we've disagreed about them for decades. Why are we so divided now? Part of the answer is Trump himself. The Great Divider knows how to pit native born Americans against immigrants, the working class against the poor, whites against blacks and Latinos, evangelicals against secularists, keeping almost everyone stirred up by vilifying, disparaging, denouncing, defaming, and accusing others of the worst. Trump thrives off disruption and division. I don't disagree with any of that. I think all that's true. But that begs the question of why we've been so ready to be divided by Trump. The answer derives in large part from what has happened to wealth and power. This is correct. In the fall of 2015, I visited Michigan, shout out Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Missouri, and North Carolina for a research project on the changing nature of work. I spoke with many of the people I had met 20 years before I was a Secretary of Labor, as well as some of their grown children. What I heard surprised me. 20 years before, many said they'd been working hard and were frustrated they weren't getting better. Now they were angry at their employers, the government, Wall Street. Many had lost jobs, savings, or homes in the Great Recession following the financial crisis of 2008, or knew others who had. Most were back in jobs, but the jobs paid no more than they had 2 decades before in terms of purchasing power. So stop there for a second. If you're making $20 an hour in 2005, and then you fall out of the workforce for whatever reason, and then in 2012, you start working somewhere else, and you're still making $20 an hour, that $20 an hour is not the same amount as it was in 2005 because inflation, the price of things go up, the value of things go up. So that $20 isn't going to get you the same amount of stuff that it would have in 2005. That's basically what that means. I heard the term rigged system, so I often began asking people what they meant. They spoke about flat wages, shrinking benefits, growing jobs insecurity. They talked about the bailout of Wall Street, political payoffs, insider deals, soaring CEO pay, and crony capitalism. Those complaints came from people who identified themselves as Republicans, Democrats, and independents. A few had even joined the Tea Party. A few had briefly been involved in the Occupy movement. So this is all over the political spectrum. The Tea Party is like the far right wing Republicans in government. So if you as an individual identify as being part of the Tea Party, like you're an ultra conservative, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not even gonna say conservative, you're an ultra right winger. You know what I mean? Because I don't think those two things always mean the same thing, but you're definitely a super right winger though. But if you were part of the Occupy movement, you're probably a super left winger. So the fact that everybody is reaching the same conclusions, Republicans, Democrats, and independents are all saying the same things, is interesting. These complaints come, oh yeah, okay. The 2016 rebellion is ongoing. With the 2016 political primaries looming, I asked which candidates they found most attractive. At the time, the leaders of the Democratic Party favored Hillary Clinton, and Republican leaders favored Jeb Bush. Yet no one I spoke with mentioned Clinton or Bush. They instead talked about Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. When I asked why, they said Sanders or Trump would shake things up, or make the system work again, or stop the corruption, or end the rigging. So that's basically what I was alluding to at the beginning. When you have two parties that are doing the same thing, one says they're fighting for you, the other is flat out telling you, no, we're fighting for business. And then the other one, who's supposed to be fighting for the workers, is also actually fighting for business. When you look at what they're doing on paper, their words don't match their actions. When you see this, and then there's somebody who essentially comes out of nowhere who's basically like, yo, I'm not really part of either of these systems. I see what y'all are going through. I want to actually do some things to change it. You know, that's what happened there. That's why those were probably the two most attractive candidates at that time. In the following year, Bernie Sanders, a 74-year-old Jewish man from Vermont who describes himself as a democratic socialist and wasn't even a Democrat until the primaries, came within a whisker of beating Clinton in Iowa, routed her in New Hampshire, and ended up with 46% of the pledged delegates from the Democratic primaries and caucuses. So it was almost 50-50. That's really close. And nobody knew who Bernie Sanders was before 2016. Be real. Trump, a 69-year-old, nice, egomaniacal billionaire reality TV star who had never held elective office or had anything to do with the Republican Party and who lied compulsively about everything, won the primaries, and went on to beat Clinton, one of the most experienced and well-connected politicians in modern America. Okay, this is some bullshit, but I'll read it. Although he didn't win the popular vote and had some help from the Kremlin. Ignore that Kremlin shit, but yeah, that's true. He did not win the popular vote. But that's not how it works. All you got to do is win the Electoral College. It doesn't matter how many people vote for you. It's about if you get the right states to vote for you. That's it. That's all it's about. It's not really about your ideas. It's about playing a mapped out game. That's it. Something very big had happened, and it wasn't due to Sanders' magnetism or Trump's likability. It was a rebellion against the establishment. That rebellion is still going on, although much of the establishment still denies it. They would prefer to attribute Trump's rise solely to racism. That's such a good point. They want to act like, oh, all these people who voted for Obama twice, all of a sudden hate black people and women and minorities, and that's why they voted for Trump. That doesn't even make sense. It's very, very much more likely what happened in that first paragraph that we just finished reading right here, where it says it was a rebellion against the establishment. That's what happened. So let's continue. Racism did play a part, but to understand why racism had such a strong impact in 2016, especially on the voting of whites without college degrees, it's important to see what drove it. After all, racism in America dates back long before the founding of the Republic, and even modern American politicians have had few compunctions about using racism to boost their standing. The Republicans had to apologize for the Southern strategy. What is the Southern strategy, you might ask? Let me take a sip of my coffee and I'll tell you. The Southern strategy was basically referring to the time when the Southern Democrats, aka the Dixiecrats, who were the conservative party at the time, and the Republicans, who were the left-wing party at the time, there was a political realignment that happened. And when the political realignment happened, it was based on a couple of different things. It was based on it was mostly about, it wasn't really a race thing per se. It was more so that the Republicans, I forgot exactly how it went, but basically the Southern Dixiecrats, they did something that pretty much all of the racist members of the party didn't agree with, meaning the public, the voters. They didn't like it, so they all switched parties and became Republicans, and a lot of those Republicans switched over and became Democrats. So that's sort of where the modern day alignment of Democrats being lefties and Republicans being right wingers, that's where that came from, because there was a political realignment. You're gonna have to, fact check a little bit of this, but the information's out there for sure. I don't, have it pulled up right here, so memory's failing me a little bit, but basically that's what happened. The Southern Dixiecrats, they did something that pissed off a bunch of their racist constituents. All their racist constituents decided to go be Republicans. That's when the Republican Party became the quote unquote racist party, and the Democrats became the quote unquote party for minorities. That's when that happened. So in reference of the Southern strategy, that's basically playing on that racism of disenfranchised white people, particularly Southerners, who may be struggling or might not be financially doing that well, or whatever the case may be. And they need somebody to blame because they're like, I'm a white person in America. I should be successful. This is bullshit. Like, this has got to be somebody's fault if I'm not. So you can use black people as a scapegoat, or, most recently Hispanic people as a scapegoat. So that's what the Southern strategy is. You can look this up. This is something that they have publicly apologized for multiple times, and they acknowledge that it was a racist thing. So let's continue. What gave Trump's racism, as well as his hateful xenophobia, misogyny, and jingoism — I don't even know what jingoism is, but I'm sure it's bad if it's in there with those — particular virulence was his capacity to channel the intensifying anger of the white working class into it. It is hardly the first time in history that a demagogue has used scapegoats to deflect public attention from the real causes of distress. Aided by Fox News and an army of right-wing outlets, Trump convinced many blue-collar workers feeling ignored by Washington that he was their champion. Clinton did not convince them that she was. Her decades of public service ended up being a negative, not a positive. She was indubitably part of the establishment, the epitome of decades of policies that left these blue collar workers in the dust. It's notable during the primary, Sanders did far better than Clinton with blue collar voters. So you see that blue collar, that's your factory workers, your auto plant workers, your railroad workers, your miners, hard labor, necessary skilled jobs. That's what that is. And that's the type of family I come from. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're blue collar all the way. Like, I know that doesn't usually get applied to black people for some reason. Like, blue collar, typically you think of, I don't know, like maybe that's just me, but my family was definitely blue collar for sure, like all the way. So both my parents were plant workers for damn near 30 years apiece. So, you know what I'm saying? I know that life. And that's true. The blue collar was left behind by a lot of these policies. And when you see CEO wages go from being, roughly 30 to 1 to over 300 to 1 and even higher, like, of course the workers are going to feel shafted. Of course they're going to feel like they're not being heard, because they're not being heard. Trump galvanized millions of blue collar voters living in communities that never recovered from the tidal wave of factory closings. There you go. He promised to bring back jobs, revive manufacturing, and get tough on trade and immigration. A lot of people don't realize how important that is to a lot of people. We live in cities. We have bubbles. We may have visited certain areas here and there and feel like we know, but we don't know. If you're not from one of these places, one of these rural places where everybody works at the same factory, and then once that factory gets shut down, nobody has a job until they build a Walmart there, and then everybody works at the Walmart for way less money than they were getting before. This is what's been happening all over middle America. You get what I'm saying? That's Detroit up. You know what I'm saying? Like back in, when they had to do the bailouts and all that stuff, like, and all the auto companies were basically going bankrupt. Elon Musk recently said the only two companies in American history, auto companies, that have never gone bankrupt are Ford and Tesla. Every other company went bankrupt. Detroit is the motor city. That messed the city up when that happened. You know what I mean? So basically, what I'm saying is I see the reasons why somebody might vote for somebody that they don't like if they feel like there's going to be material benefit to their lives for doing that. He's like, yo, I may not like the racist stuff he's saying. I may not like what he's saying about Mexicans and all of that. But yo, if he's going to bring jobs back and put a factory right here so I can feed my family again, I can look past all that other shit. That's what happened in a lot of people's minds. Continue. We can't continue to allow China to rape our country. And that's what they're doing, he said at a rally. In 5-10 years from now, you're going to have a workers' party, a party of people that haven't had a real wage increase in 18 years that are angry. That's true. They actually are working on a workers' party right now. The People's Party. Shout out Nick Brana. Speaking at a factory in Pennsylvania in June 2016, he decried politicians and financiers who have betrayed Americans by taking away from the people their means of making a living and supporting their families. That's what a lot of people were voting based on right there. And the Democrats refused to acknowledge that. And instead, they just said, oh, half the people who voted for him are deplorables and racist and sexist anyway. So they're just already bad people. We can't even work with them. Like, when you do that, first of all, even if that's true, even if there's a certain segment of Republican voters who we just don't like, you know what I mean, because of their values or whatever the case is, cool. But if you just say it blanket like that and you don't specifically point out the things that you don't like, you're leaving it open to interpretation. And so when you do that, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, is she talking about me because I like Trump? So is she saying I'm automatically racist, sexist, misogynist, etc.? You get what I'm saying? Like, so it backfired basically, and it pissed more people off than made them go, oh, well, I don't want to be that, so let me vote for her. You see what I'm saying? Democrats had occupied the White House for 16 of the 24 years before Trump's election, and in that time scored some important victories for working families. Affordable Care Act, which is actually a right-wing proposal if we're real, because it keeps all the money in the hands of corporations, and it doesn't allow the government to negotiate for prices when it comes to medicine and when it comes to treatments and things of that nature. So it's really still a right-wing healthcare plan because it only benefits corporations. It didn't really benefit the people like that. It benefited the people a little bit in the sense of you could stay on your parents' insurance a little bit longer. Um, that's really the only thing I can kind of think of because basically everything else stayed the same. And there was a tax penalty if you didn't have insurance. So there's that. Affordable Care Act, expanded earned income tax credit, and the Family and Medical Leave Act, for example. I take pride in being part of a Democratic administration during that time. The Democrats did nothing to change the vicious cycle of wealth and power that had rigged the economy to the benefit of those at the top and undermine the working class. Absolutely true. They did nothing. As Democratic pollster Stanley Greenberg concluded after the 2016 election, Democrats don't have a white working class problem. They have a working class problem, and which progressives have been reluctant to address honestly or boldly. Progressives that are in government, he means, because everybody on YouTube has been speaking about this since before 2016. We were speaking about this in 2014, 2015. The fact is that Democrats have lost support with all working class voters across the electorate. In the first 2 years of the Bill Clinton and Barack Obama administrations, Democrats controlled both houses of Congress. Yet both Clinton and Obama advocated free trade agreements without providing millions of blue-collar workers who consequently lost their jobs any means of getting new ones that paid at least as well. Clinton pushed for NAFTA and for China joining the World Trade Organization, and Obama sought to restore the confidence of Wall Street instead of completely overhauling the banking system, which is why we wanted him in there, was to do that part. We didn't want him to restore confidence. We wanted him to overhaul it. And he didn't, clearly. Both stood by as corporations hammered trade unions, the backbone of the white working class. They failed to reform labor laws to allow workers to form unions with a simple up and down majority vote, or even to impose meaningful penalties on companies that violated labor protection. Clinton deregulated Wall Street before the crash. Obama allowed the street to water down attempts to re-regulate it after the crash. Obama protected Wall Street from the consequences of its gambling addiction through a giant taxpayer-funded bailout, but allowed millions of underwater homeowners to drown. 5.8 million homes. Obama did that. Both Clinton and Obama turned their backs on campaign finance reform. In 2008, Obama was the first presidential nominee since Richard Nixon to reject public financing in his primary and general election campaigns, and he never followed up on his re-election promise to pursue a constitutional amendment overturning Citizens United versus the FEC, the 2010 Supreme Court opinion opening wider the floodgates to big money in politics. Basically, what that did was that established that money equals speech when it comes from a corporation, so you're not allowed to limit the amount of money that a corporation gives to candidates or to PACs, because that would be limiting their speech. And corporations are persons, so you can't limit a person's right to free speech. That's what that means. What that really, that basically means every time you spend money, you're actually just talking to somebody. You know what I'm saying? That's what that means. So if I shoot up to Vegas, you know what I'm saying? And I want to go hit up the Bunny Ranch. You feel me? Like, is that me paying for sex? Or is that me talking to a sex worker and just letting her know that I appreciate the job she's doing? You get what I'm saying? Like, money doesn't equal speech. That's a stupid concept. Like, they only did that to benefit corporations. So that's what that's in reference to. Although Clinton and Obama faced increasingly hostile Republican Congresses, they could have rallied the working class and built a coalition to grab back power from the emerging oligarchy. Yet they chose not to. Why? There is no longer a left or right. There is no longer a moderate center. My answer is not just hypothetical because I directly witnessed much of it. It was because Clinton, Obama, and many congressional Democrats sought the votes of the suburban swing voter, so-called soccer moms in the 1990s, and affluent, politically independent professionals in the 2000s, who supposedly determine electoral outcomes and turn their backs on the working class. They also drank from the same campaign funding trove as the Republicans, big corporations, Wall Street, and the very wealthy. We can kind of stop right there, actually. I don't believe that there is no longer a left, right, or a moderate center. I don't think that's the case. I do think, however, now if he's speaking about government specifically, then I agree with that. If he's talking about the voters, I totally disagree with that. Um, I do think that because the Democrats and the Republicans are so similar on so many issues now, it's muddying the waters in such a way to where I've seen lefties be just pro-war now. And they're like, oh, if you're against the war that the Democrats want to do, then you're not really a good lefty, I guess. Like, I don't know. It's weird. We just saw the Democrats block the railroad workers union from being able to unionize and strike. So that's confusing people because you got people like AOC and Ilhan Omar and Rashid Tlaib and Ayanna Pressley, Jamal Bowen, Cori Bush, and Ro Khanna, and all these people who are supposed to be traditional lefties in the sense of being pro-worker, anti-war, pro-Medicare for all, pro, you know, free education or taxpayer-funded education, I should say. Um, but then when you put them in a party that is blatantly pro-war, it muddies the water for people who are like, well, my politics align with AOC's, and she's for the Ukraine war, so I guess I should be too, then. So you see how it muddies the waters when these political figures who at one time aligned with us very strongly, they were, everything I just said, and now they're doing the opposite. Look up the Ro Khanna Exposed video I did, and that shows just one example of how it happens. You can go back 2015 where they're like, we will never do this. This is evil. And then you go now and they're like, no, we have to do this right now. And it's like, whoa, what changed? So Ro Khanna's not the only one who is, you know, had this change of heart, I guess you could say. It's happened to a lot of them in Congress. It happens pretty quick too. That's the wild thing. It happens pretty quick. So I just want to leave that with you all. If you're scared of Donald Trump, if you don't want another Donald Trump presidency, think about what the people that you are voting for are doing and see if that's actually benefiting the cause that you're fighting for. Because to me, that has not been the case. Democrats are not fighting for any of the things that I want to see happen. And as a result, it just keeps allowing Republicans to take back over and then make shit even worse. So then Democrats have to come in. It's just a game back and forth. Like they know what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? They know that they can both just bounce back power if nobody does anything. If one party actually started doing some shit, they would win consistently. But nobody's doing that. So politics as usual. Shane G right here, Ethos Media Network. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that good shit. Catch us next week. Peace.